just a little demo app, local app running in here. And what's really cool about this, I'm just going to say, let's go shopping. Got this just like little demo shopping app that shows some products, lets me add things to a cart and get details about them and such. So as you can see, I asked the tool to, or asked the agent, I want to go shopping, and it called into my MCP server to say, hey, what can we do with this? And it executed a tool that returned a resource, and now you see I've got an interactive UI inside of my inside of the experience here. So again, like, this is fully interactive. I can click around like I normally would in a web page. I can do things like you know, perform queries, mutations, etc. One of the things that's really cool too is I can interact with the host environment. So for example, like this is an easy one, open links. I can do that within the application. I can also like have it prompt for me. So for example, like this inspire me button is a pre-filled prompt that says, hey, based on what you know about me, give me some ideas on what you might recommend. And you can see it's starting to give me some ideas. But what's also really great about this is it's contextual. So if I'm looking at this and say, you know, okay, I want to let's find more about like these tablets. Can you show me some products in the tablets category? Let's go ahead and execute this. And you'll see that it will call my tool. We can actually kind of see what it's doing here. It's going to call my browse products tool along with some additional information here. But now we see that it's kind of brought me to the that category page. I might be interested in saying like, show me more details about that iPad. So you're getting some of that agent experience, but again, with really rich applications. And I'll just show one more thing here before we move on to kind of the next thing. So yeah, we've got some details here. We see this 499 bucks. Let's say I want to add it to my cart, and because we're in 2026, I don't click anything anymore. So we're going to say, let's add it to my cart. Let this run. And it's going to use one of my MCP tools to add that to my cart. And again, because that returns a resource that is my MCP app, I get my view here. So pretty cool stuff. So that's sort of MCP apps, the experience as a user in a nutshell. But let's talk through more of the techie side of things, like the actual technical piece to this. So where does Apollo come in all of this? What are we providing to you to make this make it possible to build these MCP apps? So what we say is Apollo MCP apps are sort of the combination of an Apollo client integration along with Apollo MCP server. So as Apollo MCP server 1.8 is where we added support for MCP apps in combination with an Apollo client library at Apollo/client-AI-apps that you can use together, that will allow you to build these apps for AI hosts. So what on the Apollo client integration side, what does it do? It has specific knowledge for knowing how to map GraphQL queries to MCP tool calls. It does this writing a manifest file, which you'll sort of see a little bit later here. But it understands the MCP apps protocol, like how to actually take the tool result that was executed from the MCP server and map that to GraphQL query result into the Apollo client cache. It provides utilities for working in the MCP apps environment. So again, you saw that demo of interacting with the MCP or with the host, where I could have it pre-fill a prompt for me. And then also some build tooling that allows you to output targets for ChatGPT and other MCP apps hosts. ChatGPT is MCP apps plus some additional extensions that aren't available to MCP apps themselves. So we have two different targets that let you choose what you want to output to. On the Apollo MCP server, so it's going to use the queries that we've defined in our Apollo client code, the JavaScript code, to define tools and resources for the MCP app. And this uses that manifest file that's output from the build step on the client side in order to define these for you. And then it serves those MCP requests for the MCP app's host. So let's actually dive in and build an MCP app. We'll take a look at some of the facets of building this, some of the things that we provide to you, so that if you wanted to try this out, you get a better idea of what you have available to you. So I'm going to switch over to my code now, and I'm going to spin up my development experience with a tool called MCP Jam. If you haven't heard of MCP Jam, this is a really great tool that we've been using to test our MCP apps development, just to kind of get an idea of building these things out. What's really great about this is it will let you run tools. It will show you previews of your UIs in here, similar to MCP Inspector, but I think there's a little bit more to this tool than that provides for you. So you can see here, for example, I've got in my app builder the list of tools that are available to me. I can execute these tools. Oh, yes.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Absolutely.
Would you mind
Go for it.
just command plussing a little bit to zoom in?
Oh, yeah.
Some folks are asking to get a little bit more readable text here. Thank you so much. And just a reminder
no
to the audience too, pinch zoom is also a thing in Zoom. So between us zooming in and you zooming in, I think we should be able to get that clarity. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. You always think that you're zoomed in enough, and it's I guess I'm on a 32-inch monitor, so that doesn't help either. Anyways, so with MCP Jam, I can run tools and get you can see here like the output to these things. You can get an example of like what inputs that go to it, the results. You can see, for example, the notifications that go back and forth between the host and the view. Which is really helpful for debugging. So I'm not going to focus too much on these throughout this presentation, but I just wanted you to see kind of what we're looking at here to understand what we're doing. So yeah, we invoked this top products tool, which will show me this view here. I want to just talk through. Let's just start looking at code here to see kind of what goes into building this. All right, let me do the same check, vibe check. How's the text size on here? Are we big enough, or should I go a little bigger?
You could go a little bigger.
All right.
And while I have you, there's a question in Q&A that I thought would be good to pull out.
Yes.
They're asking about different agents. So ChatGPT was on the screen before. For demo purposes, well, it's more of a statement, but if you could confirm, this is the same concept should work in any kind of agent experience that supports MCP apps. Is that accurate? Like, for example,
Correct.
Claude or some sort of out-of-the-box thing that you're plugging in to a custom chatbot, for example.
Yes, that's correct. So I don't have it set up for this demo today, but I have run this in Claude. I have run this in Goose, and this runs in both of those because those tools support MCP apps. So yes, as long as it supports the MCP app spec, you should be able to run it inside of that target. I believe there's several now. I think VS Code supports it, and there might be one or two more. Obviously, the list is ever growing, but yeah, anything MCP app spec, you should be able to target this. We have that special ChatGPT one right now because ChatGPT has some additional extensions with some additional capabilities and some different ways to interact with the ChatGPT host. So we output to 2 targets for that reason. Speaking of output to 2 targets, that's actually something you get to decide. What we are looking at here is the Vite configuration for this application here. I'm just going to point to a couple things. There's a lot going on here. Most of this, don't worry about too much. But I'm going to point to 2 things. One is we export a Vite plugin, Apollo Client AI apps, which provide the build configuration for a few different things. Again, like making sure you can target the 2 endpoints. You can also do things like write platform-specific code, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But yeah, we provide that plugin for you. And with the plugin, you get to decide what targets do I support? Do I support just MCP, just OpenAI? Do I want both, which you provide to this targets option here. And then dev target, whenever I'm developing, I can really only develop 1 target at a time. So you get to choose which one you're developing for. We have as you saw, npm run dev :mcp is just basically an environment variable called target that gets set to MCP, so we know which one to target. We'll look at OpenAI again a little bit later when we're doing some platform specific code. But all right, next, let's talk about like actually initializing the client. For those that have worked with Apollo client for any amount of time, this is going to look pretty familiar. I am instantiating an instance of Apollo client here, but there's two kind of differences here. If you look at my imports, you'll notice that my Apollo client instance is coming from the AI apps integration, so add Apollo client AI apps, instead of the core Apollo client library. And same thing with the Apollo provider, Apollo client AI apps React. This is going to look, the structure is going to look familiar if you're used to base Apollo client here, but then for other utilities like in-memory cache, we're pulling that straight from the base Apollo client package. So it really is kind of this integration for working within the MCP host environment. A couple things here. You'll notice I don't have a link specified here, and that's because by default, we instantiate an instance of what we call a tool call link. When you execute queries, you're not using HTTP link and making HTTP calls, but you're actually executing tools. Apollo MCP server has an execute tool that allows you to run queries through the MCP server, and that's essentially what's going on. You'll that here, and then away we go. Something else you'll note here: Apollo provider, because there is an initialization period. There's sort of this handshake between the client and the MCP host. We suspend the application in the Apollo provider until Apollo client is fully resolved. That just ensures that we get like the tool result back, that we can write it to the cache, and then you can work and build stuff. So you'll see a suspense boundary here. Suspense boundary is optional. If you don't provide it, your screen will just be blank while it's initializing. I prefer to show a spinner at least some sort of feedback that something is working. So here we've got a page spinner here. All right, let's also dive into just the app side of things. On the app side, and again, because we're starting brand new, there are things that we want to improve in the future, but this is how we're kind of handling sort of the routing in this. So all of the views that you saw in my demo earlier, I did like, show me the category, or show me this category, add this to my cart. All of this is one single HTML file with a router under the hood. We're just using React router as memory router here because you can't actually do your browser URL routing, rendering in the iframe. But we're just mapping essentially tool calls to paths. So you see here, we've got hooks. Like I said, part of the integration is providing hooks. Let's actually move this down here so you can see a little bit easier. Use tool input, use tool name. What tool was actually called to initialize this view? What was some of the inputs? You can get that here with these hooks. So, and again, we're mapping this here. It's pretty rudimentary right now. Like I said, we're pretty new in this this library, so expect to see improvements to some of these things in at some point in the future. But yeah, I just wanted you to see kind of how we get from tool call to view. It's just take the thing that was executed, map it to an endpoint. All right, value some of the groundwork. Let's get into some of the exciting stuff. Before I go on too much, do we have any questions that I can answer so far? No, then we'll keep going.
One question that might be worth pulling out is whether this will work with any GraphQL backend. So I heard
yes,
some different name drops there.
Yes, yeah, it should. So because the MCP server, Apollo MCP server, is connected to your GraphQL endpoint, it would be anything that Apollo MCP server can execute on your GraphQL API. So I am writing queries against this GraphQL API that I have running. Apollo MCP server sort of sits in between, but it will execute queries on my GraphQL server. So yeah, should theoretically work on any of them, as long as your Apollo MCP server can talk to it.
Awesome.
All right, awesome. So What we're looking at here is one of the pages. If I go look at this here, just to give you some context, we're looking at essentially a category view. So when I say I want to look at a particular category, this is the query and the view that we're looking at right now. I can execute this too. Actually, well, we'll get into that in a second. Right now, I can navigate to this by click. Whoops, that clicked too soon. I can navigate to one of these categories by clicking on this, but because I don't have a tool defined for this, which I don't expect you to know what tools are available, but right now I don't have a tool defined for this view. So if I do something like show me products in the furniture category, one thing you'll see here as it gets going, you'll notice that it tries to execute the search products tool, which is going to initiate just a text search against the products. And you'll see, like, we get no results for furniture. It's going to try again for something different. But what we really want is to be able to execute a tool where I can have kind of a targeted experience into that category. So we're here in this view. This is the query that I'm executing for this view. If you work in Apollo client, this is going to look pretty familiar. I've got a query. I'm using use query to initialize this. Don't worry about the commented code yet. We'll gradually introduce that here, but and then I'm rendering that data inside my application. So that's all of this code here. So pretty standard stuff. What makes this unique, and to actually tell Apollo MCP server to define this as a tool, we have added a tool directive. So I'm going to take this. And this tool directive is just basically a way to tell the Apollo MCP apps, hey, I want to turn this query into a tool that can be executable by my agent, and then allows me to offer that view. Over here, I'm going to just refresh my set of tools. And we should see now my name here, Browse Products. We should see the Browse Products tool show up here. I can run this. I'll just run this with just the standard category. Actually, in fact, I've noticed sometimes when you refresh and start, it's sort of slow. I'm just going to refresh the page here and do it this way. But let's go ahead and run this again. We should see, okay, great. Now I can execute a tool and get straight to this view. In fact, if I do the same thing, can you show products? Sure, category. Scroll down here. Now you see we're executing Browse Products tool instead of that Search Products tool. Which is really great. So you're essentially a directive away from being able to take a GraphQL query in here and execute it as a tool available to the agent. All right. So there's a couple things here that are sort of interesting working in this MCP apps world. The biggest thing is if you take a look at my query, we've got a set of variables that we are executing this with. We got the category, sort order, the like limit, and like what page we're on, that sort of thing. I'm going to show you something that makes this quite interesting, which is that we don't really know what the parameters the agent is executing this tool with. We can simulate it here over here. So like, for example, we see that like running the furniture category or picking any of these, we see the right thing. But as soon as I start introducing some of these other things, again, you see like my default order is ascending, my default sort by is title. As soon as I start doing other things like price, we'll say descending. Let's look at the most expensive items. I'm going to run this tool again. We've got a problem, which is that my UI isn't updated to reflect that. The tool I executed with, category furniture, we sort by price and order. We get some data for that. If we look at the result here, we can see those things. So for example, here's that information. We should see like the Colombo sofa first, but it's here in the middle. So we need to fix that. Because we're working in a slightly different environment, we have some unique constraints. So we provide a tool called Create Hydration Utils, which you wrap around a query, and you get back a hook that essentially will handle that negotiating between what parameters were my tool executed with and what am I actually rendering with. That way you can provide to the query and actually see something here. In fact, one other thing to point out, sorry, I know I'm going all over the place. One other thing to point out is like when I executed this, this actually initiated a tool call for those products again, because I executed, got some results, wrote that to the cache, but because I'm not running that query with the same parameters, we resulted in a cache miss. It refetched, and hence why I've got this set of data instead of what my MCP server fetched. So yeah, we're going to fix that here. Create hydration utils. I've got this this hook that I get back. Use hydrated variables, and this acts as sort of a setter for variables that I can use in place of state. So this is going to handle that negotiation, understand what the server executed with tool input, and then map that to variables so that you get access to the right values. So what I'm going to do here is replace all of these default variables. Instead, I'm moving it over to here. And then we're going to read values from those variables instead of my my state. In fact, I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff. And we're going to update my handlers. A couple things to point out. You see, I can do like a set with partial variables, which will update. So if I navigate before I hit save, if I navigate to something like this, that continues to work. But yeah, we'll be reading from these variables instead. And what that allows me to do, if I go ahead and re-execute this query, now you see we get the actual right values here. We see that Colombo sofa organized first, and we should no longer see that tool call that we were getting before when initializing this view. So yeah, sort of a wrinkle in development with this, but yeah, we have that parameter. The other thing that's important to note about this is that if I navigate away and then come back, what I want is my default set of variables to execute instead of the tool call, because I may be looking at something different. For example, like I'm looking at furniture here, but if I went to look at fragrance, we don't want the hydrated variable to be used. We don't want to be looking at the furniture category. We want to be looking at fragrances, etc. So again, another thing that just this hook kind of takes care of for you. Okay, that was a lot. Any questions up to this point?
I have a question.
Or keep going.
Few
Yes.
from the audience for us.
Yes.
If we could zoom out, Gerald, and talk about where the catalog information is coming from. I'm not sure if we could just give a quick peek to the schema, some of the
Yes.
underlying data sources, and then I got one more queued
Absolutely.
up for you as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Here's the schema. This works on an endpoint. So let me bring it up here. So I should have mentioned in the beginning, what I'm working on right now is a modified version of our AI apps template, which is something that we provide to you to sort of get started. It has this demo application built in it, but also includes like the MCP server configuration and some other things. So this might be a great starting point. So I'm working in here, specifically this e-commerce graph, and that uses just a dummy JSON.com, which is really useful for this sort of thing, especially for this demo app. We don't have to maintain that. But yeah, dummy JSON provides a bunch of useful endpoints and things to be able to get dummy data for applications. So we're just using this, mapping it to a GraphQL endpoint, and that's our GraphQL server.
Awesome. And point of order, you're showing React here. Will it
Yes.
support native JavaScript or web components is another one?
Yes, so that's a great question. So we have that in mind, much like Apollo Client Core, we provide sort of the core utilities. So you'll import client, and then you'll do like client.watchQuery, etc. The same thing applies here. We provide React as sort of a first-class utilities over in the base Apollo client. We're doing the same thing here, but there is nothing stopping you from building integration. We don't plan to have our own first-class integration for like Angular or Vue or those others. Same like we do with Apollo Client Core. If we ever added one of those like first-class, then of course we'd support it here as well. But it should be possible to build your own integration. We built this so that you can use the core APIs directly to build those yourself or use those how you need to.
Awesome. Thank you, Gerald.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Back to here. So where was I at? Categories. So yeah, again, like defining tools is as simple as taking a query that I'm using to execute my view, much like you would in a plain Apollo client app, and adding this @tool directive, which updates my manifest file and tells the Apollo MCP server, hey, I've got a new tool, here's a definition for it, so that it can go execute that query for you and return the result. So we think this is a pretty frictionless way to be able to create this. What's great about this too is this works not only for queries, but also mutations. You saw in the ChatGPT example earlier, I could say add to cart. Here is a mutation that lets me do just that, update a cart item quantity, take a cart item, I can adjust its quantity. I suppose this is a little bit different, but point being is that this is a mutation that I've defined as a tool that lets me change the quantity of a cart item so that I can set it to something. Let's just so you can see visually what that does. I've got this iPad mini. Can you add another iPad mini? We should see. So this is a great thing about working with AI, right? You think it's going to do one thing and it doesn't. But point being is that we've got these mutations available that I'll see that now it's doing add to cart mutation as well. But I can map those tools again to my views, and here we go. All right. One other great thing about Apollo Client and working with GraphQL is using fragment collocation to define data-driven components. The same works for here. So just to kind of show something here is I've got the same product tile rendered in a few different places throughout my application. We've got it here on kind of this top products page. If I go view a category, which we were looking at earlier, I've got those product tiles. And if I search, I'm using those product tiles as well. You'll notice that price is missing though on each of these tiles, and we want to add it. Here I've got a co-located fragment for my component so that I can make sure this component has its data needs met. And I want to be able to get back the price and render it in my view. So I'm going to pull the price in my fragment and render it to my component. And now, let's just run this category again. Now you see I've got it available here. So you still get sort of the same development experience that you do building just typical web applications that you do with this system as well. Now you see the price there, and just for good measure, if I search, you'll also see the price show up here. So yeah, I can develop the same in both systems, which I think is pretty great. Yeah, and just to mention that what that does is update the query defined for that tool, and then the Apollo MCP server will use that updated query and execute that instead. All right, a couple other things, just something I wanted to show here, which is again, like being able to interact with the surrounding MCP hosts. This like Inspire Me button, for example, we provide utilities for that. This Use app. If you go look at the MCP apps documentation, you'll see that they suggest using a package that they provide at model context protocol / ext-apps, which provides this like app thing that you use. Well, one of the things with this system is that we instantiate app for you, but then you can get access to that and do things like send a message to the agent, or do things like open a link by accessing this. And this has all sorts of different things that you can do with it, but that is available here. And let's do this. And as you, again, like you pull this from the Apollo Client AI apps package. All right, last thing, which I think is really cool, which is being able to write platform-specific code. So as I mentioned, like you want to, there are cases where you may have functionality that works in ChatGPT, but not MCP apps, because ChatGPT provides some additional functionality that you wouldn't get otherwise. And we're using this example here of just this app title. You may have noticed, looking at this, we've got this Apollo store with this question mark. And what we want to be able to do with this is say, for OpenAI, I want this to say Apollo ChatGPT store. For MCP, I want this to say Apollo MCP store. I'm going to stop my development server for a second, but with the Vite plugin that we've provided for this, you can provide app-specific code by creating a extension. If you're familiar with like React Native, they have it like .ios.ts or I think it's .android.ts. And we've got the same sort of thing here. So for example, I'm going to do an OpenAI specific component. I'm just going to copy this app title in. I'm going to replace this with Apollo ChatGPT store. Great. And over here, I'm going to rename this to MCP.tsx, which is the extension that we have for MCP apps. And same kind of thing here. Let's do Apollo MCP store. All right, Vim's freaking out on me. What's going on here? Try that again. There we go. All right. Let's start this up. I'm going to start with just the MCP side first, dev MCP. I'll do dev OpenAI in a second, but by updating this, and by the way, you might be wondering too about imports. My app title here, the imports are the exact same. I just, as long as I don't provide an extension, it will figure out which one of these to use based on which platform I've got targeted. So yeah, here we see Apollo MCP store, which is pretty cool. And let's try it on OpenAI. I'll run this in the dev OpenAI script, which just does the target OpenAI, and we'll execute this. It always bothers me that it scrolls down so much all the time, but there we go. We got Apollo ChatGPT store. So here I've got a platform-specific component that I've developed for this. What's really great about this too, we provide some TypeScript extensions for your TS config that provides additional capabilities for these. You saw like when we were pulling use app, we pull that from Apollo client AI app / React, which is a shared tool for both platforms. But we've also got, let's say in the OpenAI, I can use window.openai over here. We provide types for window.openai. Unfortunately, for some reason, OpenAI doesn't provide types for window.openai anywhere, so we polyfill that for you. But now I make that available over here. You can see I can get certain things, or we'll call this user agent. The same thing to note, if I pull this over into the MCP side, whoops. Oh, great, my hover is not working over here for some reason, but you should see TypeScript errors over on the MCP size things or the shared files. So again, we provide extensible TS configurations for you to kind of pre-configure .mcp and .openai so that you import from the right places. Just one more example here. If I pull from AI app / OpenAI, we've got a hook, for example, use widget state. That is available to me in OpenAI. Let's see if I can get this to show me hover. I may just, here, app title. Let's try this again. All right. Vim's quitting on me on that file for some reason, but the same, I can't use anything from the like React side of things, or from the MCP side of things. So any functionality that might be available to MCP tools are not available in my .openai.tsx files. So anyways, again, just one of those developer things. We've got in our documentation a way for you to configure TypeScript so that it can handle the .openai and .mcp extensions so that you're always developing using tools that are available for those platforms. But there's that. All right. All right, so last thing, which is that this is not the most fun having to define mcp.tsx or .openai.tsx. In this case, this component just needs to change the text out. I don't actually need additional like platform specific functionality, but instead I just need to know which platform I'm developing for so that I can change out the string here. I'm going to show you one other utility that we provide. First of all, I'm going to just delete that OpenAI TSX file. And let's update this back to just app title.tsx. Let's get rid of that here. And we provide this thing called platform. Again, if you're familiar with gosh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking here. React Native, they provide a similar type of utility. But what we can do with this here is say for a specific platform, gosh, come on, TypeScript. Here, I'm going to restart my LSP server here. I might be able to have better luck here.
While
Of
we're
course, it's
doing
not
that,
gonna.
Gerald, while that's
Yes,
there, might we have time for a question or two?
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think I've seen a few questions pass by, and it might be good to address this live too about the tool directive. A lot of folks are
Yes.
kind of focusing on the schema side of things, but from what I'm understanding from what you're saying, it's more on the operation side of things. If you could just zoom in one level of detail on what that would be, I think that would help a lot of folks.
Yeah, it's an operation side of things. It's a client directive. Much like you think if you use Apollo client, like we have at client, we have at connection, we have at unmask if you're using data masking. All those things are to Apollo client itself. That gets stripped out when they actually run on the on your GraphQL server. Same thing happens here. That it's just a way to denote that operation as a way to say, okay, we want this operation defined as a tool in my MCP server, and so write that to the manifest, and then the Apollo MCP server will define the tool definition for you. But it is operation based. This is not something your GraphQL server itself would know or do anything with. Your GraphQL server is just your GraphQL server. It doesn't know anything about MCP or anything else. It doesn't know about at tool. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. And I think from an extension of that, got a question from a user who is
Yeah,
running a federated graph. And because it's on an operation side, right? Is it true that they wouldn't necessarily even have to worry about the schema level, right, from their federated graph? They just need to go ahead and add at tool to an operation, and then that tool will
correct.
show up. No like governance or extra process required there.
Correct. Yeah. Again, like the best way I like to think of it is if you're building this just as a plain web app, build it like a plain web app. You just add at tool to the operation so that it's available on your list side. That's the only thing that's different is just it's a way to tell Apollo MCP server, hey, I want a tool definition for this so that it can be executable by the agent. But yeah, your schema itself, again, like is unaware. So whether it's federation, whether it's anything else, that shouldn't matter. I'm just querying this like I normally do. It's just not being executed by Apollo client on the client through HTTP link. It's an HTTP call from Apollo MCP server to your GraphQL API.
Cool.
That's the difference.
I got one more for you before we're back on
Yeah,
TypeScript server, the
yeah,
TypeScript language server. And it's a more of a general question about authentication. How is authentication handled? You know, if I'm using Apollo client, I'm maybe, adding something to my link chain to pass a header, or something like that. How should folks think about authentication when they're going ahead and either the question wasn't specific to whether or not we're going from the client to the MCP server or from the MCP server to the graph. But I'm wondering if we can zoom in there or if that's something where we should take it into the Q&A bit and answer async.
yeah. Let's take this in the Q&A because I'll probably need a little bit help from. Hopefully Andrew is on and can help answer that a little bit. The
Cool.
TLDR, I'll just give you the quick, like maybe a one sentence thing is I believe that's handled on the MCP server side, not so much on the Apollo client side. But yeah, we'll come back to that here in just a minute. So yeah, I've got like just this last thing to show off, and then we'll get into Q&A here. So yeah, so you saw me update this code here. We've got platform, this select utility, and then I can say for MCP, I want to run their Apollo MCP store. For OpenAI, I want to do Apollo Chat GPT store, and then it will, based on what target I've got, pick the right one and return it. So here I'm running MCP. You see we get Apollo MCP store. If I do the OpenAI build, we should see that same result. Let's execute top products here. And there we go, Apollo ChatGPT store. What's great about this utility too is it can be anything, including a function. It just forces you to define the same type for both things, but this could be literally any value that you want, if I had the right syntax here. So like you can use this just as a general purpose utility for, based on the platform, do X or Y, which can be really great for like if you need platform specific styling for something. Okay, that was really the last thing to show. I know it's kind of a whirlwind tour of various parts of this integration, but I just wanted to give you an idea and see firsthand how you would use these tools to your benefit to be able to develop these things so that when you're building for these MCP hosts that you have a good experience. So again, like we really wanted to focus on taking what you know today using Apollo Client and building web apps for Apollo Client and really be able to use a lot of that knowledge in building these as well. Like 90% of what you know with building Apollo Client applications will apply here. The difference being just that you have some additional directives and that like use hydrated variables tool that you're working with instead. Cool. All right.
Awesome. That was super useful. Thank you, Gerald.
Yeah.
This
Sorry, one last thing I'll say, and then
yeah.
I promise Q&A right after.
Sounds great. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah. So like I said, I just want to say like we want to hear from you. We're very early days in this MCP apps integration. We wanted to have something out there so that you can start building. I believe MCP apps itself was announced, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's very, very new. And so like if you start using this and go, this doesn't work, or like it would be really nice to have X, please open an issue in the relevant repo, Apollo Client AI apps for the front end code for the Apollo MCP server in that repo. And we'd love to hear kind of what you have to say. So again, we've got ideas for improvements to make this even better as we go along this journey. And we're really excited to see what you build with these tools here. Oops, not on that one yet. But all right, so with that, let's open it for Q&A officially.
Yeah, I saw a question. I'm not sure of the answer, to be honest. So maybe Gerald, you or somebody in chat knows the answer to this. From Addison, if the agent can't find a relevant tool for a prompt, will that be exposed in the hooks? We can handle it similar to an error. And I'm not sure what the APIs are right now for that.
Sorry, state that one more time, just to make sure I have this correct in my head.
Sure, yeah. Like let's say I'm asking the agent, I'm prompting the agent and it can't find the tool for whatever reason. Like it didn't pick the right tool or something like that. What is the handling mechanism for that? Is there a hook in there that we can do and handle that like an error case, an exception case, or is that not supported by MCP or our integration?
Yeah.
I just don't know the state of the art.
That's really, really hard question because right tool is very subjective. You may, as a person using that, like when I said, I want to see products in the furniture category and it executed a search instead of the browse products. How do I know code-wise that browse products is actually the right one versus this? There may be a way to get messages. To be honest, I'm a little bit fuzzy. That app might have a way to see the message log, but unless you're trying to parse messages and gather intent, like that's going to be very difficult to define what right tool is. What the thing that is provided to the application by the host is this is the tool that is executed, and here's the input that we gave it. That's that use tool name and use tool input hooks that you saw. Those are the raw values from the server. But in terms of like doing the right one, I would say this is just like typical description. Like you saw in the tool definitions. Let me go back to categories here. We define a description. I would say like if you're finding a big miss rate, however you measure that, like maybe you need to update your description so that it's more descriptive, so that the agent can hopefully pick this being the right one more often, right? So, but yeah, at the code level, there's not really anything that we provide because right, quote unquote, is very subjective based on your experience. So yeah, the best we can do is say, here's the tool that was executed, and you can map that to a specific in this case, route. If you're using like a router to handle the various views within your app. But yeah, that's as best you got right now. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll have an epiphany at some point in the future, but
100%. Yeah. And a question from another user about scaling. So the question here is about scaling capabilities. Is the scaling entirely managed by the underlying infrastructure, or are there abstractions in place in Apollo MCP server? And I thought that the question of this would be more like, you scale it as you'd like. You'd go ahead and get a pod of whatever you need. But just wanted to pose that, Gerald, if you
yeah.
have any advice for scaling.
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, it's another one of those subjective in what you mean by scaling. I'll answer it one specific way, which might not be the way you think it is, but Apollo MCP server is built in a way where you can develop multiple apps and it can serve multiple apps, each with an isolated set of tools and resources, which is nice if you. And so instead, like if you have 5 applications that you build for a specific MCP host, then instead of having to run 5 instances of Apollo MCP server to serve each one of those, you can run one instance of Apollo MCP server that serves many applications. An underlying note about that, let me go back to that beat config. We'll just look at like the URL that we're using in MCP jam. So we have this app query param, which lets me target a specific application to serve for this. So, and that will, when you do like tools list, will only list tools for that application. So that's one way of scaling in terms of just it can serve multiple applications at once. Beyond that, like it's something that runs on a server. It's written in Rust, so it scales as well as I think Rust does. Like I don't know exactly what to say there. Maybe Andrew, you've got a better idea of how to answer that more on the network layer, if that's kind of what you mean by scale. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers it for now. I definitely will use this opportunity to point people to community.apollographql.com. A lot of the questions that are being asked here also could benefit from more detail on like your specific use case or something like that. And that's really a great place to get kind of deeper into the details. Like here, I have an app that's trying to do this. Do you have any advice for trying to accomplish that? And then we can really dive into your use case and provide some more good conversation around that. So of course, for the webinar, I think this makes sense, the right level of detail. But if you have more specific questions, we'd love to hear from you. It really helps. So don't hesitate to go ahead and join our forum. You could just kind of like log in with your GitHub handle if you haven't tried it before, or sign up with Google, whatever. It couldn't be easier. So community.apollographql.com will be there hanging out and trying to answer questions.
Yeah. I saw something mentioned about from Andrew. Maybe I can show some configuration. We do support a configuration file. You see here I've got .apollo client apps.config.ts that lets me define certain settings for the Apollo MCP server to serve this app. So for example, like I use there are images that come from dummyjson.com that by default, if you don't specify as part of your resource domains, they'll get blocked by the iframe, like the host iframe CSP settings. I also use a couple fonts from Google, so I got a list of those. You can define all of that in here. There's a bunch of different settings, but CTI site. Oh yes, let's go here. So I'll let someone
All
take over
right.
here.
Yeah, sure. I'll take it from here. Gerald, thank you so much. So much information here. To all the folks who've been tuned in, thank you so much for joining us here. We have a few things, so don't go yet. Join us on March 11th, everybody. We heard scaling questions here. Wayfair has an amazing set of GraphQL deployments there that are extremely instructive. So check out March 11th, Scaling All the Things, How Wayfair Experiments, Builds, and Ships Faster with Apollo. You got the QR code right there. Got some links going your way in the chat. We really hope that you'll join us here. Please do stay in touch. We're going to be doing more and more of these streams throughout the year, sharing all things MCP, GraphQL. It's going to be great. So again, to everybody who tuned in, thank you to all the Apollo folks who made this happen. Gerald, everybody in chat, Shantae, Caitlin, thank you so much for making